welcome to this, our latest Hot Vendor Fireside podcast. Although in this case, it's a video cast and you can see us both on the screen. I'd like to welcome Dev Singh, who's CEO and co-founder at AiRO Digital Labs, I think is the correct way to put it. You tell us, Dev.
Yes, sir. AiRO Digital Labs, that's right.
Fantastic. So we chose you as a hot vendor. HFS selected you as an HFS OneOffice Hot Vendor. Because you're making end-to-end outcome-focused automation quick and easy in a transformation-shy market. The US healthcare and sciences and life sciences sectors are challenged with an overwhelming amount of data to manage, as well as internal operations-related data. These sectors also have to handle sensitive patient and drug research information. So being able to easily manage this data and derive important insights to enable faster and better decision-making is essential to remain effective and competitive in these industries. So improving and automating the key processes is central to achieving this outcome. So Dev, tell us a bit about your organization, how you came about co-founding it. Maybe you might like to mention your co-founders as well, and what it is that you think you're doing that's different and significant right now. Particularly, I understand you're really doing very well in the US, but also looking to expand a little around the world. So let's start with telling us a bit about Dev and AiRO Digital Labs.
Thank you, David, for having me today. Much appreciated, and thanks to HFS for the recognition. We really appreciate that. Just to a little bit about myself. My name is Dev. I'm the founder and CEO for AiRO Digital Labs, and I worked with some of the most reputed global tech firms for several years across North America, Asia, and Europe. And then finally something hit my head, and in 2018 I founded AiRO. And the mandate or the mission is to focus specifically on enterprise adoption of AI and its three foundational technologies: data, cloud, and intelligent automation. Ultimately, with the clear aim of applying all these technologies for the betterment of humanity. That's our core value. That's our core mission. Personally, let me tell you, when I began my career back in late 90s, I literally worked on Y2K readiness projects back then. And later on, it's amazing where we have come. I witnessed the rapid emergence of IT and BPO industries during the late 90s and even till 2010s. But, lately what's been happening is the rapid convergence of the tech world and the BPO world coming together and paving the way for what I love, HFS vision of OneOffice coming true. One intelligent bot at a time, I guess. And so what I personally bet on back in 2018 when I was founding AiRO, I think has almost come true. And I guess we are in for a wilder ride ahead, if you will. So what do? We focus specifically, as I mentioned, on AI and its three foundational technologies, data, cloud, and intelligent automation. And we focus on applying these technologies in the enterprise context. We specialize in many sectors, specifically in healthcare, life sciences, even manufacturing and high tech, which means that we have created domain-specific assets that enable a very, very quick and easy deployment of these technologies in an enterprise context. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. In addition to all of that work, what we have also created is a SaaS platform called Omni that literally enables our clients to quick launch their citizen developer programs. In some cases, quick scale to more than 500 citizen developers in a matter of 6 months or less, which is quite amazing when you start thinking about it. And it was a clear response to some of the needs that our clients expressed. That, hey, I don't want to be dependent on you or any vendor for that matter for simple use cases or simple processes or simple implementations. I want to be able to do it myself, but can you help me? And typically the answer would have been, an year back would have been, yeah, we will help train you and et cetera, et cetera. But then now, I guess the answer lies in the fact that can you actually create a platform where I, as the client, can self-serve myself, my citizen developers can self-serve, self-learn, and you can help me, coach me, guide me through that process. And do you have a program like that? And we took all of that, we bundled all of it in that platform called Omni. So that's another thing that we have created. So now we are literally in a very sweet spot where not only our clients call us for complex rollouts and implementations, but also when they need to become self-dependent, and independent, and that's something that we're really proud of to be able to do. Yeah.
So let me dig into that a little bit. There's quite a lot to unpack there. There's the idea that you've responded to the market's need for the skills gap that we're seeing. There's, as we know, the Great Resignation and then everything else around it is telling us that there are not enough digitally skilled people in order to deliver the work we need to do. One of the solutions to that is to automate as much as we possibly can, but then who do you get to do the automation? And so I think what you're coming up with there with Omni is a really smart solution to the challenge there. I suppose there's a question around, has that become something that you've really seen as a sharpened need over the last 12 months? It seems to me that the market is increasingly wanting to automate where it can to solve that problem. But again, there's not the people there. The second part of that is, who is it that is a citizen developer? This is a question we often get asked, because there's a big difference between somebody who can turn their hand to some development work and just anyone in the business being able to start developing and all the shadow IT challenges that brings with it. So who are you targeting with the Omni platform?
No, that's a great question. And, from us, who is a citizen developer? Quite simply, and I, at the risk of sounding overly simplistic, I believe that every one of us is a citizen, and every one of us can be a citizen developer because we all, at some point, especially in an organization setting, be it back office, mid office, front office functions, we are all doing stuff that we hoped and wished that could have been automated at some point of time. We complain, we keep getting bored, but we continue to do some of those processes. And therefore, the ability to look at what you're doing today and the ability to then say, can I actually have this thing automated so I can be more productive and I can elevate my own job profile, I can elevate my own role, and I can grow into becoming more productive for my organization. That ability is what we enable, and because that's an innate desire for a lot of people. And you can take any examples, like in a typical healthcare provider setting, rev cycle process, for example, is a very repetitive process. It is obviously a big umbrella of processes, but if you slice and dice and take all those sub processes one at a time, you realize that all of them are extremely repetitive. The human intervention that's truly required is literally very less if you really think in an ideal setting. A lot of that can be automated, and therefore someone who is scrubbing claims or handling provider credentialing or patient onboarding, all of those processes are very, very, I'm not going to say easily, but yes, they are. It's very possible for someone who is actually involved in doing those processes for many years at a time and knows best how to actually automate that in a practical, real setting, if only they knew the power of automation technologies, if only they knew some of the basics. And yes, they're going to encounter, you can't suddenly hope that a HR specialist suddenly becomes an RPA developer or a complex implementation role, in a complex implementation, but they can do simple automation. They can do some of the bottom of the pyramid automation, which, by the way, forms 80 to 90% of any organization's automation initiatives. That leaves with only the top 10 to 20% of real use cases that may require combination of many different technologies, be it OCR, be it NLP, be it machine learning, which someone like an AiRO can absolutely come in and help from the consulting side of things, right? So we are in the business of helping our clients becoming self-reliant and helping them roll out as many citizens developers as possible through this platform and in a very structured way. So I hope that addresses some of the questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I think there are plans, I know, with HFS for you to go even deeper on before us. So I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, let me take you back in time a little bit to when you were kicking off with the business. Most startups happen because somebody's fed up with the way the world works in some way. I think something that other people are doing is wrong and they've got a better idea. What was it that inspired you to start this one?
All right, two things. One, my own personal itch, which most entrepreneurs claim to have one. I did as well. So I always wanted to do something of my own, frankly speaking. Secondly, once you are at a personal juncture in life where you're ready, now you focus on what can I really hope to make my mark on. And I realized that back then, and I large tech companies, and I was personally part of I personally led some of those companies and some of those divisions. We were focused on generating large deals. And back in 2016, 2017, large deals were not in RPA or AI or ML. They were in, let me take over your entire apps and infra, and let me get that $200 million TCV deal, versus helping the client or the chief digital officer co-experiment into some of the technologies that are 5, 10, 15 years hence, but they need to start the experimentation today. We were not focused on that. So the CDO and the CIO literally felt a gap from the partner standpoint in being able to help them take the next leap. We thought that's a great white space. Let's just focus on that. That's where we came in. So we always, just from the get-go, we've been passionate about applying advanced tech to enterprise to literally help these organizations harness the power of these technologies for the betterment of their employees and their customers. But very early on, David, and you'll find this interesting, we were told by a couple of clients, I was told, I was a one-man army back then, that slides alone are not going to cut it. You can come in and take an academic lesson as to what is AI, what is ML, what is RPA, but that's not, don't talk about it. Show us what these technologies are capable of. We took that to heart. We started creating what is today known as AiRO Hub, which is a set of hundreds of different POCs across different use cases, back office, front office, mid office, very domain specific. We chose healthcare providers, payers, pharma, life sciences, med devices, one industry at a time. And we said, what are some of the processes that are repetitive, that are mundane, that these organizations would love to see automated? We then created these POCs as our own investments, and that has now become a library of almost 500 POCs on different platforms. And each of these, when I use the word POCs, is a combination of not just RPA technologies, but also OCR technology or NLP or machine learning technology. So it truly becomes a showcase of what potentially a claim scrubbing process may look like once it is transformed with these technologies. And that really helped. And that claim scrubbing was just an example. Later on, what we've done is when we went to the clients and we started showing them that gets all the nerve cells in your brain buzzing, and there's all right. If I love this POC, I see where this is going, and I'd like you to come in and do a real POC in my organization now. And then one thing leads to another. What we also realized that we didn't stop at that. We said at some point of time, let this not stop at us getting credibility in the eyes of the customer and getting another implementation project. Let this library become an asset that any client should be able to access, should be able to download the source code, should be able to then say, oh, here's how you typically automate an employee onboarding process. This is typically the source code for Automation Anywhere. This is typically the source code for Microsoft Power Automate or UiPath, and depending on the context. And therefore, now let me see if I can replicate in my setup. So we created the downloadability in this entire thing, and then pumped it back into what today we call Omni. So in Omni, a citizen developer literally has access to this entire library. So not only are they able to get an access to top 25 technologies and softwares that are needed for them to become citizen developer, but also beyond just knowing what these technologies are capable of, they now have a real practical example, like in a POC, that they can replicate and literally use these tools to help them create practical POCs in their organization, which is so powerful. This is, as I love, as our clients have started telling us, where the certifications stop is where Omni starts.
Okay, yeah. So this all sounds like a very smooth journey, Dev. Right? Yeah. It's been plain sailing. You haven't had any difficulties. You haven't had to change direction at any point. Where's the truth? Where were the moments when you thought, I'm banging my head on a brick wall here? I'm not making the progress that I want to. What were the magic moments that made you think, no, I need to set up an Omni platform, or no, I need to sign a deal with this partner? Or what were the big moments where they might have been dark, but you came out the other side smiling?
So yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one. I mean, in one situation, this was a Fortune 500 healthcare provider, up in Minneapolis, and we went to meet with them. We were talking to them and this is back in 2019. And we were talking to them about, this, our capabilities, here's what we can do for you. And they said, oh, I mean, you guys are great and you're awesome, and the story, we love it, but we'd like to just do it on our own. Can you help us there? And I stopped short. I said, do you know what it takes to do it on your own? And this literally became a very frank conversation where I asked the CIO, listen, I mean, it has not been easy for me to create the company so far, and for you to be able to replicate almost a mini AiRO within your organization is going to take you that much longer, right? So do you have the people? He said, no. Do you know how to create that internal talent? He said, no. He said, do you have the ability to help us? And that's where I said, okay, I walked away from the situation. I said, no, I don't. But let's talk in 6 months. I may have something for you. And so that was one of the pivotal moments where we said, I think this is an industry-wide problem. I think most of the organizations feel that RPA or automation is something that they should own, and they just don't know how to, and there's nobody helping them or enabling them. And that's a sweet spot. So not only did we want to become a consulting organization, but on the side, we also became a platform organization. And today where we are at, I think we have been relatively successful in both. So that was one of the pivotal moments in the journey. And then, when you're growing a company, David, there's just so much, every day is a joyride, right? I mean, it's full of ups and downs. And so you can't complain. That's what you signed up for.
Very, very much so. I have been on the journey myself at one point. I'm interested in, because you're saying you're responding to market need. You're identifying this gap in internal skills and the ambition for organizations to take ownership of their own automation as a discipline rather than a strategy. What are you seeing in the market now? Is that more of the same? Is it changing? Are there greater challenges, or the doors easier to open now because there's a little bit of water under the automation bridge? What are you seeing?
Now, again, a great question. One would think that, so Phil came up with the term RPA back in 2012, is it? And one would think that 10 years from then, things would have reached a certain level of maturity. And yes, I mean, there has been progress. One can't deny the technologies are at a certain level of maturity where one can be really proud of what one has created, but the adoption is another story altogether. Although most companies have embarked on the journey, they're in some stage or the other. But when we go out and when we speak to the market and the clients, we feel that there's still a lot of ambiguity in terms of the application of these technologies and how to go about it. They want partners to be able to bring clarity of technology, clarity of its application, clarity in terms of ROI expected, clarity in terms of pitfalls that one can face, clarity in terms of the right deployment models, what succeeds, what doesn't. I mean, and that continues to, I guess, remain a certain challenge in terms of, and a roadblock in helping organizations really adopt these the automation technology, the AI technology with, in a wholehearted manner. Right now, we are still not doing this in a wholehearted manner. And I guess the onus is on partners like us to bring that clarity to the situation, talk to our clients and say, listen, here's what works, here's what doesn't. And that comes with partners who are experienced and who are also open to co-experimenting with the client. Now, that's a very important gap still in the market, where you can find a lot of capable partners, but you don't find partners who are open to say, I would love to co-experiment with you, Mr. Client. That requires a certain investment of time, resources, money, energy on behalf of the partner. So that's one thing that we have addressed, or we try to. We take pride in the fact that we bring both a combination of capability and co-experimentation, and that's what AiRO is all about.
So just to be clear, you're sharing investment, sharing risk on experimental projects?
Yeah, because they're still in an experimental stage. The market is still not, we feel that all these technologies have matured, and sure, yes, they may have, but the adoption is another story. And for that, the client needs to make up their mind and to.
So, I'm just sorry to interrupt. Is it I'm trying to understand what the gap is. What is the client not being exposed to enough? Because we've got stories galore. You've got stories galore with successful or automation projects. Do they just not believe them, or do they think they only apply in certain circumstances, or do they hear too much of the failed automation stories? Because we hear a lot of them too, right? So what's the gap here, and how are you trying to close that?
So there is a gap in terms of visualizing what automation can bring to the table, how a certain process will look once it's done and once the project is successfully over. The ability to visualize, and we addressed that early on in our journey. I've talked about AiRO Hub and the library and the POCs, right? So that was one of the key things that helps a client move to the next level in their decision making. And that, I think, is where a critical gap in the market is even today, where everybody is just talking through slides, not going to them and saying, let me show you a few demos of how you will look once this is done. That requires co-experimentation. And that's a clear gap in my mind. The other gap, I would say, or let's just talk about perception issue, is the whole thing about automation associated with job losses. And that also is a clear, and I choose my words carefully, it's a perception gap where you associate automation with job losses. The onus, again, is on partners like us to then go to the clients and say, it's not job losses, it perhaps is a role shift or or a crossover for your current workforce from the current roles into something different. You're not firing people because you're automating. You're just helping them elevate their own jobs and profiles into something that's more meaningful to the organization, et cetera, et cetera. So that, I think, is the other piece or the other challenge in the market. So one, again, to summarize, one is the whole visualization of how a certain a technology will impact you. And the second is, all right, it looks possible, but am I going to have to fire people? And that's another big challenge.
Yeah, I very much take your point, particularly on that second piece. It's always, for me, comes down to KPIs. If I'm going to set KPIs that are about headcount and taking out headcount, then you're going to expect me to reduce the human effort required. If I set KPIs that are about value, creating new value, creating outcomes, then that takes me in the direction of doing the end-to-end process thing, doing the end-to-end outcome thing that we all think is the right thing to do with automation. So hopefully we'll see a little more of that in the market. I love your point about the slides. It would be great to see far less slides in the world, full stop, wouldn't it? But that's just one way in which we can make a small contribution. Then just in the interest of time, because I know we're going to be running a little short, let's talk a little bit about the future. Dev, where are you taking this business? Where do you want it to be in 3-5 years' time? We used to talk about 5 years out, but these days it's so hard to predict beyond a couple, isn't it? The rate of change is that great. So what do you see for your organization saying 2025?
Yeah, so last 4 years have been pretty, I'd say, interesting and dramatic for us. And again, I choose my words carefully. And, it has been a rewarding experience so far. We've met with some of the best people in this industry. We are working on some of the most cutting edge technologies. We've grown to almost 200 people in a span of 48 months or so, from zero. So, it's been fun. Where we, my vision for 2025 is obviously, there's a near-term vision of being able to expand into other geographies. Right now, we are very US focused. We'd love to be able to expand in Europe and Middle East. And the other piece on the vision, the near-term vision is around helping clients upskill more and more So basically a better adoption of Omni across the organization, across the clients. 2025, right? I mean, I'm scared to even predict what will happen given what we've been going through, all of us have been going through in the last few. But at the risk of being proven wrong, let me actually give you my perspective. Two things, we want to be by in the next 4 years, we'd love to be seen as a AI rollout partner of choice for our customers, and an employer of choice for our people. We continue to aim to solve, some of the next generation problems in our sector of choice, which is healthcare. And we definitely want to reach that goal, and of course impact a better patient outcome, especially on the healthcare side, with the help of AI and automation. And the second associated vision that I have specifically for Omni is that we would love to hit the 1 million digital citizen developers mark, who have leveraged Omni to upskill themselves and take their company into the age of AI. So by 2025. So let's see where we can get. Right now, we've just began the journey. So these are the two basic visions for the company, both on the consulting side of things and the platform side of things.
So Dev, the Omni side, we will go into on future occasions, I'm sure. Be interested to understand your certification model for that, for example, because you're going to have to know you get your million. We'll go into that another time, perhaps. But just briefly on your other point about the whole concept of wellness, I guess, rather than fixing people when they've become ill, finding ways in which you can prevent illness in the first place and help people live a better life. Are you seeing demand for that from the industries you're serving, or are you having to go to them with POCs that maybe align themselves to that approach rather than the fix it later that we tend to see in healthcare at the moment?
Yeah, prevention is always better than cure, right? And that should have been the motto of healthcare industry all along. And it used to be, but then later on, I think we kind of lost track on that, and everything became about post diagnostic versus pre. And so when you talk about helping detect or helping predict the illnesses or helping predict a certain health outcome, it's all about data. And health data at a personalized level, today we have all those devices in the form of an Apple Watch or what have you, that can go ahead and take some initial data from you as a person. And then there's another big data source, which is our healthcare system, the providers, the physicians. If you take all of these data inputs from the providers and from the person, and you combine all of that, at some point in time, you again have the biggest issue in life, which is interoperability, right? And then, of course, on top of it, layer it with PII, personally identifiable information, which has to follow the HIPAA rules, right? At some point of time, so you see all these different companies that are trying to make sense of this data, and that are trying to make sense of how this data will finally be used to predict an outcome for a certain individual. I hope, and that is the Holy Grail. We are far away from that Holy Grail today, from my vantage point. But we've seen some green shoots emerging. We've seen some companies doing some really good work in terms of being able to make sense of this data. And whoever solves this thing first will ultimately become the king of the Amazon of healthcare, if you will. All right. And by the way, Amazon is also getting very much into healthcare. So That's my 2 cents on this. But this is a 2030s conversation, I'd say. We are still in the 2020s, and I do believe that we will have to cross some of these roadblocks first before moving to 10 years from now. We should be able to reach that holy grail soon, but we're getting there.
Thank you, Dev. I'm just thinking we've covered the majority of what we would ordinarily cover in our Hot Vendor Firesides. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any particular point that you would like to share at this juncture?
No, I mean, again, thank you. It was a great conversation and great questions, David. I do believe that the best is ahead of us, all of us. Where things are going, they are continuing to accelerate even more. And my millennial kids know a lot more about this than I do, and I sincerely hope that we can keep pace at some point of time with the way things are moving. AiRO is definitely gaining ground in terms of our utility for our clients, the value that we are able to deliver for them, both in terms of services and the platform. And we are today seen as a partner that's different, a partner that's brings a clear combination of empathy with capability, and which is I think it's a rare combination. So that's the organization we built, and we'll continue down that path. Again, thank you so much, David, for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed for your time, Dev. Really appreciate the time you've given to this. Wishing you the best of luck with AiRO. And as you know, we'll be continuing our conversation. So in the meantime, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.